Welcome to Keep What You Earn, your judgment and jargon-free zone for entrepreneurs of all levels. Get ready to learn how to scale your business, save money in taxes, and create a business that grows your wealth. If it feels like the financial side of business is like eating your vegetables, well, then think of this podcast as the ranch dressing to make the process a little more enjoyable. My name is Shannon. I'm a CPA and business owner on a mission to simplify money and empower others through knowledge. I hope this episode inspires you to take action, but remember that the information we share is for educational purposes only and is not individual tax advice. Now that we got that out of the way, let's start the show. So I was inspired by attending the Junior Achievement Steps for Success program that we're sponsoring, and they were talking about different types of bank accounts and different types of accounts where you can put your money to invest or to save. And they were bringing up the different types of, ways to either store your money or save your money. And I was really intrigued by, the kids' reactions to like knowing that there was more than a one type of bank account. And it made me realize that may not be common knowledge to people that there's more than one type of bank account. So I wanted to break down for you different cash management strategies for a business owner in a non-traditional form. And I have gotten this question before, so I think it's really important to answer that, like, what do I do with my cash if I feel like I have enough cash in the bank and I feel like it's not working hard enough for me? So if this feels like you, then this is your episode, because I'm going to unpack the different ways that you could leverage your cash in order to make more money. So number one, let's just knock it out. The checking account. We all know that there is a checking account in pretty much every business. If you don't have a business checking account, go open one right now, because every business should have at least one business checking account that they use for operating expenses. Maybe you're using it for payroll. Maybe you're using it for your income, like when the income deposits come in, or all of the above. And you may have multiple checking accounts. I recommend having multiple for different purposes. And I recommend having, if you run payroll, potentially having a payroll checking account, potentially having a operating expenses checking account. And you can use it to also budget. You can use them to create sort of an envelope method of knowing how much you have to spend in each area based on the balance that you have in each account. This is similar to the profit first model if you follow that. Now, I'm a fan of profit first. I'm a fan of the sentiment, the idea of it, but the execution can be really mucky if you don't have the right guidance for it. So before you go open 6 checking accounts, I think you should start with 1 or 2 and just make sure you can be disciplined enough and that if you need to open more, you can. Now, moving on from the checking account, you've got a savings account. Now, savings accounts are a little bit different. Savings accounts will typically have, now checking accounts will have a little tiny bit of interest. Like lately it's been at 0.0 something percent, like 0.05%, something like that. So unnoticeable. I don't even know how much it is. Savings accounts are typically going to be higher interest. And if you can find a high yield savings account, even higher. So right now, as I'm recording this, we are dealing with rates around the high 4s, I would say like 4.65 to 4.8 in high yield savings accounts. Now that is pretty good, but you have to keep in mind that will fluctuate as interest rates go up and down. So a high yield savings account specifically is great if you need to have liquid cash, which I'll explain. But if you need to have liquid cash, but you want it working a little harder than in the checking account, and you don't plan on using it that frequently, because savings accounts typically have a limit on how many times you can take money out of them in a given month. They're designed to be hold it accounts. They're designed to be accounts where you put your money in and you don't touch it. So they limit the amount of transactions that you can have coming out of it, which is smart. It makes sense, because otherwise we'd be using that for our checking and be earning interest on it, but you can't do that. So a savings account is designed that way for a reason. Now, when I say liquid cash, what I mean is liquid, and I want you to think of it this way. If you don't understand liquidity, liquidity is how fast you can convert something to cash. So I always kind of say liquidity is how, it's almost like snow in your hand, right? When you have snow, it's kind of frozen. And then as it touches your hand, it becomes liquid. So I think of that and say, how close to liquid is it? How close to cash is it where you can then use it and move it more easily? So I think of cash flow. I think of flow, fluidity, liquidity. And that's an important concept to understand, that if you have liquid cash, it means that you have cash that you can transact with. If you have things like stocks and bonds in the market and investments, those are not liquid because it will take you a couple of days to turn it into cash. So you think about the snow or ice, it's going to take some time to become liquid. So it's not high liquidity. So you have to think about this. Now, when you have a savings account, you can have that in your business. And it's great for liquid cash if you know you're going to need it for, say, big inventory purchases or tax payments. This is the type of account I recommend you use for your tax savings. I recommend everybody have a high yield savings account in their business to set aside for tax savings. Now, if you want to go a step further, if you want to then say, okay, I have enough cash in the business, I have enough in my checking account. And I typically recommend, keep in mind that you have about 4 to 6 months of monthly expenses in your checking account. Okay. Then we have anything extra in the savings account. But if you want to take it a step further and you say, you know what, I want to invest the money and I want it to grow. And I know I'm not going to touch it for a long time and I don't need it to be liquid. And I want to go one step further with it. There are a couple things you can do. You can open a corporate brokerage. If you have a corporation, you can open a brokerage in the corporation's name and you can actually invest in the market under the corporation. Now, this means that when you buy and sell these securities or these investments, you're going to have capital gains and losses underneath the business. Just keep that in mind. You're going to have investment income and expenses. You could also just take a distribution or pay yourself out of your business, and then you can take that and go invest in your own brokerage account or your own retirement or your own, types of funds that you have. Now, the brokerage accounts, keep in mind, are taxable brokerages. These are not your typical IRA, 401k, and they don't really have a tax benefit in a sense just by investing in them or just by putting money into them. In reality, you have a tax benefit, I guess, there's two tax benefits. One is if you don't make money, if you lose money, like let's say you buy an investment and then you go sell it for less than you bought it for, you have what's called capital loss. And you can deduct capital losses up to a certain limit, and that will reduce your taxable income, like a deduction. Hey, it's Shannon, and I wanted to remind you that the love language of podcasters is reviews. If you wouldn't mind taking a couple of seconds just to leave us a review if you're enjoying this show, we would really, really appreciate it. Okay, back to the show. Now, the other side of it is, and you actually lost money, so that's why. It's not like you get money and you get to deduct it. But the other side of it is that capital gains, if you actually make money, capital gains are traditionally taxed at a lower rate than regular income. So if you're making money from, increased values of your investments, then it may be a good idea to make money that way as well, because you can typically pay less in taxes for the dollars earned there. Now, typically businesses won't really invest a ton of money in a brokerage. It's a lot riskier. And honestly, that's not what you created a business for to do anyway. Most likely, you're not going to be putting all your money in a brokerage account just, once you put it in your business. But for some business owners, they do decide that they want to put some excess cash there and have it work a little bit harder because they know they're going to be saving it for a rainy day several years down the line. And they know that they're comfortable putting it in those investments. Now, I do think that at a minimum, depending on where you're at, if you're in your early stages, let's say you're still making your first million in annual revenue, I would probably lean toward the checking and the savings accounts and maybe a little bit in the brokerage, only if it is kind of that set aside money and it's designed for a specific purpose long term. And I would even consider putting it into investments personally if you could, depending on what type of structure you have. So I would keep that in mind as you grow, that there are different channels, different places where you can put your money if you want it to grow over time. And there's different purposes for these different types of accounts, especially in the context of business. So if you take nothing else away, just keep in mind that, checking and savings accounts are key, understanding the difference, but also using that high yield savings account for your tax savings is key as well, because you can actually make interest income off of those funds while you're waiting to pay your taxes. And sometimes you can actually make a lot more money than the penalties that get incurred. So it can be a good option if you choose to just set that money aside, forget it, and let it earn interest on your high yield savings account. So keep that in mind as you plan out your strategy and how you're managing your cash. One of the best decisions I made in business that saved me countless headaches was getting expert advice in HR as I started growing my team. With so many compliance requirements, especially for virtual businesses, I could never get caught up on everything I needed to learn or I was supposed to do. That's where Jackie and her team at People Principles came in with their signature HR audit for only $349. But get this, if you use code Shannon50, you get $50 off of that. So it's only $300. You'll have peace of mind by the end of the week with this exclusive offer as a Keep What You Earn listener. Here's what's included: a step-by-step self-assessment, a 60-minute strategy session with their HR experts to ensure that you're in compliance and you have a plan for getting on track, an HR template to keep all this important stuff in one place, and a roadmap of the top 3 best practices to implement right now in the next 6 to 12 months. Again, use code Shannon50 to take $50 off of this assessment. Do not miss out on this opportunity or let unintentional HR mistakes derail your business growth. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating and review on your podcast platform. This small action goes a long way for podcasters to get our message heard by more business owners just like you. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to information about our guests and ways to get in touch with me. We'll see you on the next episode.